today, the standalone release for Rocky Mountain National Park came out. Yes, it is called Rocky Mountains. That's because there are 2 trips inside of there, inside of that book. Additionally, I have credits for Yellowstone, which I am trying to exhaust over time. So that's out today. Take a look at the video. It's up above in the nest. You can, kind of see some of my imagery and video. Some of the images are set into motion. Some of the motion is organic. I like experimenting with this AI, and it's really helping to put together these kind of promotional videos and stuff like that. Because, a billion years ago, when I first visited some of these parks, I was not as forward thinking as perhaps I am now, capturing video as I need. So I was only taking still photos and not always in the right orientation. So here I am applying the technology, and sometimes it even is decent. A few other things up above in the nest while we're getting rolling here. Our last workshop is now available as a podcast. That's up there. And I put out a new article on Substack, which is kind of getting after one of the topics that we discussed last year. It's called So You Want to Be an Indie Publishing Author. Kind of goes into monetization, formatting, distribution, those angles of, really getting your book into the market, I would say. So today we are talking about writing environment and setting the mood. To me, that is about, where you are comfortable working on your manuscripts and how you get comfortable there. I have my way of doing things. Heidi has her way of doing things. We all have these idiosyncrasies about manifesting our work. And, we're going to talk a little bit about that. But yes, today, Rocky Mountain National Park audiobook, ebook, standalone release is out. As I have mentioned, I'm trying to do 1 audiobook a month for the duration of 2025. We've got 3 done. This is a quarter of the year. That's not bad. I feel like I'm staying ahead of the game, and I am already working on the mix for next month's release. I'm trying to get ahead, so I want to make sure that I keep meeting my deadlines. And Heidi, let's hear an update, as we always do on the workshop spaces. How's your work coming along? What are you getting done? What's done? What's close to done?
Not done. Well, I've been working on that novella, and I'm in version. I'll resave versions, so it's like I haven't done the whole thing over, but it's like I think my last numbered was like 12, so it's like 12. So I've reworked it. I got it to a point where I think I sent it out to another person who hasn't read it to get their opinion just of where it's at now. I want to see what they have to say in regards to it, see if I get similar feedback that I got from the first round of people. So that's or if it's changed. It's changed significant. Well, okay. So the structure, this is what's interesting, and it's kind of interesting writing a smaller piece for me, because the Songless the Desert's like, it's a monster, right? It's like 400 pages. And I have another novel. I have the second book for Songless, the main story. I have the first draft, and I need to start, and I've poked at that a lot. I haven't, and I need to do that, but it's big. But this is something that's interesting for me is this is a smaller piece. It's like 20-ish thousand words, 22,000 words last I checked, somewhere around there. So it's like barely a novella. So obviously it's easier to manage, but what's interesting is it's giving me I hope this is useful information for everybody. It's giving me a lot of insight into my process because I can see it better. I can see what I'm doing better just because it's a smaller chunk. And I think I've said this before. One of the things I realized is I hadn't developed the story in certain parts. So I had the overall arching story, right? But certain parts of it were just underdeveloped. So I been going back through and strengthening that, in my opinion. That's why I'm curious to see, someone who hasn't read it, who didn't read the earlier drafts. I'm very curious to see how they respond to this draft. That's why that's gonna be interesting to me. But I think in terms of the process, what I'm trying to say is, it's like, it's it's that structure, right? If you have the structure right, for me, this is kind of how I work. I will get my basic idea of my structure is there, and I keep hammering away and sticking everything in to build it up. Um, Basically fill it in. Like if it were to use this analogy, say if the story were a house,
Good analogy.
yeah, because the novella is called The House That Jack Built. So anyway, so if the story was a house, it's like, I'm missing some windows, I'm missing some walls, I'm missing some furniture, right? Maybe I've got the roof on, but that's about it. So I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying, is it's like it's not complete, it's still a shell. That's a better, you like that better than outline? It's a shell of a story that I have to fill in.
Yeah, I
So
think
that's what
words have meaning.
Right? They do. Isn't that funny? As a writer, that's very important to know. So I'm working on that. I need to go revisit the audiobook for Songless the Desert. I'm revving myself up for that. And I got to start working on editing that other novel, the bigger piece.
Yeah.
Which is another monster, around 120 words, 120,000 words. So yeah, so I'm hoping to get this novella out,
What's the street date?
I don't have one.
Okay.
And I should have one. So maybe that's something I need to work on. But right now I'm waiting for someone to get back to me. So, I respect other people's time. So I let them sort of say, when can you get this back? Because it's like, yeah, I mean, you're asking someone to read. It's roughly, almost 100 pages.
Yeah.
Asking someone to read a lot. So I want them to tell me what's reasonable for their schedule. I'm not going to sit there and with something that big, if it was like a couple of chapters, but it's the whole thing, that would be different. But
sizable piece.
Yeah, fairly. So, I mean, hopefully if I get something back from them, let's see, March, April, it'd be great if I could get it out by May. Let's say May.
Okay.
Let's throw myself under the bus, see if I can do it.
Okay. All right. There was another thing I was going to ask or say. Here's maybe a little suggestion, if I may. Perhaps some of these holes that you're finding would be sealed up if you did a proper outline, just speculating.
How dare you?
No. I dare.
I'll tell you why I don't know if I could do that. No, maybe other people have opinions on this.
Might they?
Well, I'm sure people have lots of opinions, and I'd love to hear them all. So for my thing, I had an idea. I did sort of have an outline of what was going to happen, and so I started writing it. I had a structure. The structure is basically that I've set it into sort of four unequal parts, based on the seasons of the year, right? So it starts in summer, fall, winter, spring. So this was the structure I sort of decided on, and I had an idea what was happening. And then as I'm writing this, I'm like, I need more to happen. I can't write this entire thing about him putting his house together. That's not what this is about. So there was I could have, and I find that I have to discover the story while I'm writing it. So it's hard for me to do what you're saying because it would, I don't think it would work because every time I've tried to do that, I sit down and start writing and something completely different happens.
Mm.
So I want to stay open to that process. So if, I mean, I could write something down, but I think that, it's like what happens, what happens in fall. I didn't see that coming. I mean, my initial idea was this guy's just going to build this house for like 100 pages. It's like, wow. And I got, and one of the things I got, the first section, summer, is mostly him doing that. And the feedback I got was, this is a little slow. So I'm like, but it had to be there because it's a piece of it. So, I mean, it's like, I hear you. That would be great if I could do that. But for some reason, even if I do that and I sort of did it for this, I blow it up. I consistently blow it up.
Well,
I blew up the first book did not go any way near how I thought it would go because when I start writing, stuff starts happening.
Well, a couple of things here. Ricky, you're up. Give us a little bit of an update on what you got going on, and then maybe segue into what your writing environment and mood setting protocol is.
Very good, Michael. Thank you for having this space. Hello, Heidi. Hello, all fellow creatives. So I late last year I started this political fantasy Christian book. It's done at 54K as of the other day. I'm kind of in the middle of looking at it. The narrative was designed at 40K, but then I had these essays that I was going to integrate into the text. And this is the first time I've ever had an MC who was a writer. So my MC is a writer. So when I write these essays, I'm not writing them with my voice. I'm writing them through the MC. So it's his philosophy because he's like that. And that book came out. I mean, I listened to it all on a PDF reader the other day, and it came out pretty tasty. I'm very grateful to the transcendent force, and I'm very satisfied with the work. I'm also outlining Draken 2, which is one of the ones I plan on posting on Royal Road. The cover is not far away. I have one cover for Royal Road already. He's going to get me the other two that I ordered pretty soon, and then I'm going to start posting. My intention is to post Mondays, deal with the initial soch, and then read the chapter I posted on Tuesdays and make it into a podcast so that I can double the networking, double the market. I'm currently, before I get to writing environment, I'm currently outlining the book of Draken 2. The reason I'm mentioning that is because of what was said about outlines. Now, my outlines are these massive monster things because I do the 3-act continuum with word budget. So my chapters average at 2K for pacing, and it takes 5 of those to make a 10K block, which is designed off of 100K. Because mostly I write 100,000 word novels lately. The last 4 I've written have been that big, 2 of which I wrote last year. Draken 1, Wargate 1, and I finished the other half of Princes of Turmoil, which is a sequel to the Draken series. I also wrapped up Cyberdonia, but that was mostly done from like about a year and a half ago. So those are all laying around, and I'm agonizing through the edits because I'm really not a big fan of editing. But outlines can get, if you outline like I do, outlines can get fairly big and scabrous and monstrous. They take up tremendous volumes because of what I'm doing with pace design. Every 200 words, the subject changes to force a flow, to maintain pacing within that 3-act continuum. So if you're bored, I mean, 200 words is pretty tight. When I write essays, it's 100 words, so it's like more constrictive. And I use an outline, not only like say I have to walk away from that work. 6 months from now, when I come back, maybe it will be a different book, but at least I'll know what it is that I'm looking at. And by design, I don't have these holes, and I truly don't. But that's fine. There's no wrong way to eat a Reese's. I know a lot of pantsers and gardeners. I know a lot of those type of writers, and their voices are beautiful. So that's the goal. However you get there, that's the goal. I'm not being judgy-wudgy. But there's a lot to be said, and I'd love to have an extended dialogue about that, because it's not that I find that pantsers are dismissive about lines, but I don't know that they fully appreciate what can be achieved. So anyway, about writing environment, as Michael has suggested, being the third point. I used to write in public, like at a coffee house or at a library, someplace quiet. Generally speaking, there's got to be a controlled environment. It has to be a meditation space, which is why generally I write at home. But I wrote several novels. My mom likes to gamble. We'll leave it at that. So she used to go to AC a lot, and mad times I used to drive her there. A lot of times when you got a diamond card or whatever, they comp you. They comp you rooms, they comp you buffets. So it's a little incentive there for me, because I'm a big fella, so I dig on buffets. No mystery as to why. But I used to go in the basement of the Borgata Water Club, where they have a bunch of fast food joints and a cafeteria layout. So you get the pleasant smell of ice cream and burgers cooking. So it's I recommend aromatherapy to secure your meditation space. So I'm smelling burgers and ice cream. Might as well be incense. It's they're burning in the temple. You know what I mean? So I listen to music with headphones on. When you're at home, you get a nice beverage, something like a coffee, or maybe a beer if you're into that, whiskey if you're into that. There's other extracurriculars I could talk about, but we'll keep it G-rated. Point being is whatever relaxes you. The writing environment is a psychic space. Comfort needs to happen for the body. You need to eliminate your adaptive processes. In other words, I got to take the garbage out. I got to pick the kids up. I got to walk the dog, shave the chickens, paint the fences. There's all this endless slate of crap that needs to be done. If that's in the back of your head and you're bifurcating or partitioning some thought to that, then you may be too distracted to enter a creative state and access your unconsciousness, plug in with the muse, creative networking, etc. So it's you got to get that stuff out of the way. Once your adaptive stuff is unslated, that's blank, you're in a much better place. The psychic, what I'm trying to say is the writing space is actually, it's in you, Lone Star. It's in you. You have to make that space happen inside yourself so that you're not in your own way. That's what I think a lot of writer's block comes from. The other half is that you're, what's the word I'm looking for? If it's not distraction, then it's a lack of inspiration. You're uninspired. But it sounds like all of us are fiery with inspiration, which I'm very grateful for. So comfortable chair, comfortable writing environment so that you're not in agony when you're typing. Because despite the fact that you're sitting there, it can be very strenuous. Quiet, like respectful quiet, or if you're in an environment, the ability to control stimulation. It's going to be hard if there's kids screaming, fire trucks going off, all that stuff is a problem. You want to isolate, withdraw a little bit to keep that from reaching you. So, I mean, I have a list from that damn book that I'm back burnering. It's on some back burner in someone else's house the way it is right now because I had to get back to it though because it's too cool to forget. But that's what I would say as far as that's concerned. You have to prepare yourself. It's like an internal thing, and there's lots of external things that can facilitate that. But I think you get what I mean. So I'm not going to rave here. That's probably good enough.
All right. Heidi, what about you? Personal writing environment, setting the mood before we really start to hit some of the outline notes. Tell us about your personal space.
Well, I would say I tend to sit on a couch with a laptop in my lap, and there's one area that I go sit in when I'm like seriously working on something, and I usually have AirPods in, and I have a particular soundtrack I listen to, and just a certain place I sit. So it's like I can't work in my office because there's too many books and things to distract me. So I literally go sit like in a living room. And that makes it a lot easier because there's nothing there to distract me other than maybe I need to go dust something. But so, I mean, that's really my ideal place, and that's where I do most of it. But I will say I'm not real good at writing in public. It's like I would never think to myself, gee, I need to write today. I think I'll go down to the coffee shop. That doesn't really work for me. And I started thinking about it as everyone's talking, and I have actually done that, but it's usually if I've just got some idea and I want to get it down. So I'm literally, I remember I took my son to get his haircut. I'm like sitting in the barbershop, typing an email to myself in my phone because I had to get it down. So there's that part too. It's like, it's not necessarily always ideal, but if you get that moment of inspiration, try and take advantage of it. But usually I need to be alone. I wrote a lot of the first book when my son was doing sports and I was in the car waiting for him. So I sort of sat in the back of the car with my laptop writing for an hour or so while he was, at practice. But so, I mean, it's for me, I need a certain amount of isolation, and I need a scenario where where there isn't like what Ricky was saying, there isn't like, oh, I need to do laundry. Oh, I need to look at this. I need to not have that in the room with me. So actually like sitting in the back of my car was really ideal because there was really nothing else for me to do. So I would say that's kind of my thing is I need to not have a visual or task oriented distraction. But I do better, I think, ideally if I'm, in a familiar environment, a consistent environment where it's like in my mind, I'm like, this is where I sit when I write. I don't know. What about you, Michael?
So I have a couple of stages of things. I find that when I'm walking, I come up with things very spontaneously and freely. So I will put those notes into my notepad app on my phone. And that way I kind of like get that little kernel down and don't forget it. It's there. It's kind of documented, secured. Now, in addition to that, I also find that I like to kind of build on some of those notes digitally. And I'll kind of flesh out, words, phrases, maybe grab links to things that are kind of connected to this piece that I'm working on, this hypothetical piece, whatever it may be, fiction or nonfiction. And then what I like to do is print that out. And then I like to work on that, physically. And I'll do that in a public place. That does not bother me in any sense. I can kind of you know, 200 to 500 words for me is a fantastic, productive day of writing, you know, amidst other stuff. So, it does not affect me to be out in the world, wherever it might be, to kind of make progress on that. And, you know, that's kind of my sense. But I will say, like, for editing and to kind of like get into like the fine tuning of things, then I'm doing that digitally, usually in solitude in a dark cavern like space. That is ideal for me. Jaji, you're up here. I don't think you've been to one of the workshop spaces yet. So this is kind of the protocol here, is give us an update on what you're working on, and then hit the prompt, writing environment and setting mood. And then we'll keep ripping along. We've got an outline. We do kind of structure these, but yeah, give us an update. What have you been doing? What's around the corner for you?
I'll try to be brief, but I want to include something absolutely astonishing that happened to me writing wise this week. So I'm writing I think it's 22 book series, of which I have 6 done. And 15 of that remain are YA fantasy, and 2 of them are set in the Regency romances, set in the same magical background. And at least 9 of these books exist in email form because they were run as role-playing games on email. So they have to be first taken off email and put into a file, which is a very long, boring, painstaking process of, going through each email and clipping it, because the files, if you go to an email and you just copy the thread, it's upside down with the top, the first email's at the bottom, and then they have to be changed from present tense second person, you do this, to past tense third person, she did this. On Thursday, I discovered Grok could just do that for me. It saved me 6 months of the most painstaking and tedious work you can possibly imagine. It just took me like 3 days to run 3 books worth of files through. It doesn't do a perfect job. It adds dialogue tags where they don't need to be. It moves things in stupid ways, but it's still going to save me weeks and weeks and weeks of work, And then I have like 6 books left I can still run through. So altogether, I'm just thinking at how long it normally takes me to do each of these tasks, about 6 months of my time has just been handed to me by the AI Grok. So I was just extremely grateful. I'm not a fan of the idea of using, everybody does their own thing, but I didn't really want to use an AI for any of the creative work because I feel that's how we learn and that's how we work through our story. But this is not creative work at all. This is the opposite of creative work. And the funny thing was, I had just been praying about the fact that I didn't feel like I had enough time to finish the project. It has a real date that it's tied to that I would ideally like to get it done by. Not that I couldn't get around it, but, it would be nice. And then this happened. So felt like God was answering my prayer there. So that's my astonishing experience this week. Right now, I am reorganizing the first book of the 2 romance books. One of them is about a young woman who is a Welsh girl coming to London, who discovers that a number of the lords in their small group of, imagine like the Harry Potter background where you have muggles and the Wizarding World. Among the magical world lords, there's a much smaller group than general England. A number of them were murdered, and she realizes it and figures it out. So it's part romance, part mystery. And the second one's about a American daughter of a Jacobite who comes to London, and in addition to having a really delightful romance, learns to let go of the hatred that her family had for the English. So it's kind of a fun thing too. But I've spent the last day or so reorganizing because I realized that I wasn't getting to the action quickly enough. If I, move certain scenes to later, I could get the mystery and the romance on stage a lot quicker. But as to where I write and how I set the mood, once upon a time before 2009, I used to have an office, but then I adopted a daughter and I gave her the office as a bedroom. So I write in the living room, and like Heidi, I am not good at writing with distractions. So I start about midnight when everyone goes to bed, and I write till like 5 a.m. And that's my regular schedule. I do try sometimes working with other people around and listening to music, and that works sometimes. But there's a lot of people in our house, and I'm the mom. So even though the people are all over 21, they always seem to be needing something. There's like 7 of us living here, so including my son-in-law. So it's just easier to work once people have gone to bed and things are a little quieter, and put on a little music, and that's when I get stuff done.
Yeah, very good. It is critical to determine these things for ourselves, right? To find these channels for our creativity, whether they are location or environmental factors. I think, some of that is synonymous, but not necessarily always. So
if I could say one other really quick thing.
You can.
I got this idea from the Hugo-winning author Joan Vinge, science fiction writer. When I was young, I used to work for her husband who had a publishing company. And at one point, the distributor that distributed Blue Jay Books went under. So he ended up closing the company, but he had a number of books that he'd already printed, and he wanted to support his authors and get them out to the world. So he was working out of his house, and I was working for him. And Joan Vinge had the schedule that I have now. He got the kids off in the morning. She woke up around noon. She took care of the kids in the afternoon and then wrote all night. And I just thought it was the greatest idea. It took me years to be able to do it myself. But I was really inspired by her model of how she did it.
Yeah, very cool. That's the thing that I find when talking to writers about their process is just how varied it is and how everybody kind of has, different needs in relationship to getting into the mood to write. I think we're all kind of idiosyncratic, but at the same time, there are some commonalities that emerge, or maybe there's some kind of tracks that numerous people they ride the rail. So we've been kind of digging for a little while. We do have notes. We're going to get into that a little bit, and Raleigh we'll get to you as well. First off, creating an ideal workspace, what does that look like? What does that mean to people? The stuff we've talked about so far, I would say, noise level, that seems to be a prevalent theme for me. Not really an issue, but at the same time, I'm also the person that was studying while I was in college on the tour bus with the heavy metal band. So that is, different for me personally. I understand other people cannot necessarily have these sorts of things going on. And that is, I think, a core element if people have been bringing it up numerous times, these sorts of distractions of their attention. And so we talk about that as a distraction, pulling you out of being focused and being able to write. But we invert that idea and we speak more positively. We speak more affirmatively about what are the things that make for a great environment. Lighting, ergonomics, aesthetics. Things of that nature. So, as I mentioned before, I don't mind. I actually don't love natural light when I'm writing. It's not. It's too bright. Plain and simple. It's too bright. So artificial light is good. No light also good. Low light good for me. What do other people think? Ergonomics in terms of that, desk setup, maybe even a comfortable seating. Ricky got into that a little bit. I like to be comfortable too, but I can't necessarily be in a recliner and write. I can't do that on a couch either. That's not, it's not assertive enough for me personally. It's not, leading me to get after it. Comfort, perhaps, is the antithesis of my creativity. Trying to really keep digging in, you have to make yourself a little uncomfortable. I'm not saying that's for everyone. That's just, my personal. Again, in broader aesthetics, decor, colors of an environment, visual stimuli. I think the visual stimuli thing seems to be more of an inhibiting factor than really a positive factor. I don't know if that is always the case, but Raleigh, tell us what you've been working on, and maybe give us a little bit of your thoughts on creating an ideal workspace for yourself.
First of all, can you hear me?
Yeah. How do we say your name specifically?
Raul.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, what I've been working on. It's interesting because because over the past few days I've actually come to a realization. It's that for the longest time I would put a book up on Amazon, but no one would buy it. I would do something. I would, tweet it out on X, but no one would buy it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. However, yeah. And, after years of doing things like this, I realized that, and especially after a failed Kickstarter, I realized something. I have no real readership. So, yeah. However, long story short, I found where, not just a readership, but exactly the kind of audience I hope to reach. I found it on a website called Royal Road.
Hey, Ricky's a supporter. He's getting started over there too. In general, though, what have you been working on?
Oh, yeah, I was getting to that.
All right.
It's just that, all this preamble is necessary because, you see, writing on Royal Road had required me to completely rethink how, story in general. So I'm really in the really early stages of a story I intend to write for Royal Road. That's it's going to be a lit RPG. And it's at least partially based on John Calhoun's Mouse Utopia, but with humans.
Very cool. Yeah. I'm not personally familiar with that, but I think that what you were getting after in terms of finding an audience and it inspiring your creativity is good. I'd say write it, get it, on the page.
I spent all of yesterday doing some world building doing enough for it to matter. This isn't just meaningless stuff because but you're not going to guess how exactly how I was doing the world building.
Tell us about your ideal workspace. Where were you ideating this world building?
Oh yeah. I like to work. I like to work in a place that's quiet, usually like a living room table. Yeah, but it's like, basically I don't like a bunch of people around when I'm working. Like now, mind you, even though I don't like a bunch of people around, I can work in public. That doesn't bother me as long as the people in public aren't bothering me. I can work in public.
Yeah, I feel that. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah.
Sort of as long as you're alone in public kind of thing, right?
Yeah, it's like it's a lot like that.
Because I think that's the draw of the coffee house for a lot of people is they can sit by themselves, their laptop, and everyone thinks, oh, it's an acceptable alone in public scenario.
Yes. Yeah, it's a lot like that actually.
Very good. Well, we got another person up on stage. We're going to move the mic along. Do appreciate your feedback.
Of course.
And
of course.
obviously, this is a conversation we're going to keep going through. So hang out. One woman, you're hanging out. What have you been working on?
I'm working on a collection of poetry at the moment.
Oh, very good.
For publication. Knock on wood. It might be out for Christmas, but no, you know how it goes. Anyway, but I'm working on that. My environment, I do like it quiet. I don't like to write when there's a lot of noise around. And fortunately, I'm in a situation where I can do that. I either write in my private part of the house, which is my studio where I paint as well as I write there. I have it set up. One end is all for my computers. The other end is for my painting. And that's private. No one's literally, you'd think I was a 12-year-old. I have a sign on the outside of the door saying, do not enter on punishment of death. So hopefully people do take that seriously. And I actually do a lot of writing in my bedroom. It's quiet, it's comfortable. And that's where I do my original write of a poem is usually someplace like where I know there's no one else going to be there. And I do my original write of a poem by hand. I don't do it on my computer. So I write that out by hand, and then I will go into the studio where I keep the computers and, do the editing, flesh it out, whatever needs to be done. So that's my process, at least for the physical layout.
Yeah, dig it.
I did try the coffee house routine for a while, but all I did was drink a lot of coffee and watch people because I do love to watch people.
Who doesn't?
So it gives me ideas, So when I'm out in public or out around the rest of the world, that's where I get my ideas. That's where I get my padding for my writing. And but I write in private here at home.
Yeah, reasonable, I would say. A lot of common themes in terms of ideal workspace. I think we all kind of share these elements. How about time of day and the impact that has? There's some points I know Heidi wanted to make on this, but let's more broadly just kind of speculate on what the time of day is. Some of us aren't as sharp first thing when we wake up in the morning. and maybe a little groggy, maybe not completely in gear. I know that I can write little bits of things in the morning and kind of like hammer stuff out. I do find that I need to come back later and make some edits and adjustments. It's not always final draft, but afternoon, great time for me, fully in gear. That's not to say that I'm writing more words on any given day, if I'm doing it in the afternoon or not, but I find that my writing is more complete. Less revision will occur on that material. In the evening time, I can come up with ideas and not necessarily finish stuff, but build out more of maybe what's already there. Heidi, what about you? When is your ideal time of day? And, why?
Probably about now.
Right about now, and here you are.
Yeah, I would say. So you're all distracting me. No, I'm kidding.
We got you.
No, I would honestly about now. I don't know if I'm necessarily a morning person. But I'd say by about 9-ish, 10, that's really 9 to noon is a really good time for me to write. I think if I sit down, I get focused, because then I'm not awake enough to be thinking about doing much of anything else per se, but I'm also awake enough and refreshed, hopefully, if I slept that night, from sleeping. So it makes a difference. So I mean, and it's usually quiet around here. By about 9, everybody's settled into what they're doing, and it's quiet, so that's a really good time for me. And when we were doing this, I'll just throw this out for you guys. There's a little research on the topic. There's a cortisol spike that happens like between 6 and 9 a.m. If you're awake at 6 a.m. As some people are morning people, and that's more power to you. A lot of times I kind of wish I was more of a morning person, because it's quiet and pretty in the morning. It's beautiful. But I mean, so they're saying this. So this is the research. So there's something that's the prefrontal cortex is at its best. So this is kind of a good time for editing and outlining to a certain extent. I'm curious if anyone finds themselves naturally doing these things during these time periods. So keep that in mind. I'll go through some of this. So if you're outlining or hammering in type prose, usually there's fewer interruptions that early in the morning. Most people are quiet. So this was interesting. They had a little thing about Maya Angelou. She said that she used to rent hotel rooms so she could write in the morning from dawn to noon. So there's a lot of, a lot of task-oriented stuff you can do first thing in the morning. Now, this is the thing I would say, and I kind of agree with that, is a lot of times you're a lot stiffer, right? So like, I think, like that sort of divergent thinking will often sort of bloom later in the day. So, and that's what I find to a certain extent, which is why that's why it's sort of mid-morning is better for me. So they're saying like between 6 and 9. So I think I get more creative as, the day goes on. So, I mean, these are things to consider if you can write between 6 and 9. I don't think most of us have the luxury with families and jobs and such to be able to use that time period. Maybe some of us do. And then also just to be, if you're a morning person on top of that. But they're saying too that between 2 and 5 p.m., this is probably a better period for imagination. This is sort of a sweet spot for that. And, that's something to consider depending on what you're writing. So maybe that's a good time for your more crazy ideas, if you're starts to, the more creative stuff, more fantasy stuff, or this, the story, that sort of thing. Now, here's an interesting thing. They were saying that 60 to 80% of writers sort of write in this time period. So, like the information with Charles Dickens, right? He paced afternoons. He wrote in the afternoon and had walks in the morning. Just kind of an interesting thing. And you mentioned that earlier, Michael, how when you're walking, you get creative ideas. I think that's true. I mean, we've talked about the importance of exercise. And I know, like, I've had that where if I'm stumped on something, if I go for a walk, my brain will work it out. Or if I, sleep on, it's another one. But going for a walk, I just start playing with the idea. So I'm sort of half passive, half actively playing with the idea and sort of find the solution to whatever was going on. But it's interesting if you if you're looking at it scientifically, there's something else to consider, like, how focused you want to be on the time of day. I think some people are very orderly and enjoy that sort of, I'm going to write from this to this. And, God bless you if you're that orderly. So if you are, it's like, this is another thing to consider. Like if you eat a massive lunch, I would say with lots of carbohydrates, you're going to have a crash. You're going to, you're going to have a slump, right? You're going to pass out. It's like, I don't eat a lot of carbs during the day for this very reason, because it knocks me out, not necessarily for writing, but just for, life in general. If I eat a bunch of carbs in the middle of the day or first thing in the day, I'm just asleep all day. But, maybe that's just me. But it's something to consider depending on what you're doing that day, And then, like, Jaji, you said that you write all night. That's, who else does that? Have you guys heard about this? Diana Gabaldon does that. She goes to bed. She follows that sort of Victorian schedule. I don't know if anyone's heard of this, but it used to be during the Victorian era that people would go to bed when it got dark, which would be like, 8:00 at night. And they'd wake up and they'd sleep for about 5 hours. And everyone would wake up around 1:00 in the morning and go visiting. The gas lights would be on. They do all this, which is wild. I mean, I don't know. I think that's such a eloquent schedule to have, to go visiting at 1 or 2 in the morning, and spend some hours up. And so she structures her writing like that, where she goes to bed, or I think that's what she does. I goes to bed, when it gets dark, and wakes up in the middle of the night and writes, for hours in the middle of the night, which is kind of like what you're saying you're doing. But that's kind of a fascinating schedule. I mean, you can try these different things. I actually tried doing that, and it did not work for me, because I don't know, maybe I tried, it just didn't work for me. But I think part of that was because I had too many obligations during the day that made it impossible for me to just sort of sleep till noon or something, like, go to bed at 5 and sleep till noon. But I don't know, that's an interesting thing to consider. And it's quiet at night. It's so peaceful. And I remember this, if you're ever up at 3 in the morning, because when I had a baby, you get up at 2 in the morning and you're up with them in the middle of the night. It's literally the most peaceful time there is on the planet, is 2 or 3 in the morning. So, I mean, I'm sure you could speak to this since you're sort of living that sort of way. It's really kind of a beautiful time. I can see why that would be interesting. And it's a great time for, like, weird ideas to slip out, right? And do you want to speak to that? Because, I mean, if you look at the day as a calendar and how you're structuring this writing, different times, I say all this, different times of the day are better for different types of work you're doing. Go ahead, Jachi. I'd love to hear your opinion since you're living.
That's basically exactly my experience. And to tell you the truth, it's not just that the house is quiet, it's that even the internet is quieter. Like if I get caught up in social media, most of the people I interact with on social media, by the time you hit 12 or 2 in the morning, are not there anymore. Not saying there aren't people from other parts of the world that are around, you know, and I have 1 or 2 friends I keep in touch with specifically because they live in another time zone and they'll write to me, you know, during the time that I'm writing, and I'll see the email and I'll chat with them a bit. But yeah, it's quiet and there's nothing going on. There's really like almost nothing else to do. Not that you can't distract yourself, but you know, so I finally, you know, get into the groove and then I write for a number of hours. And, you know, one reason that I stay up so late and I got into this is once I get going, I don't like stopping. But you are absolutely right about the mornings. You really have to be able to have a schedule where you're not jet lagging yourself all the time. I've managed to make it so that most of the time, the only day I have to get up early is Saturday. I have a Saturday morning thing that I do, and you know, obviously, I drag myself in looking half awake, but I've managed to get my other activities to be afternoon activities. You know, if you have to schedule something, you tell them. I just say I work nights, and people are usually pretty understanding about it. But during periods when I have a lot to do during the day, like last summer when we were planning my daughter's wedding and things, I had to just give it up for a while. You know, you can't live that schedule if a couple times during the week you have to be up early. It's like traveling halfway around the world twice, you know. But if you can do it, if you can arrange your schedule, then it is delightfully quiet, and you have you know a period where nobody's going to interrupt you.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, there's such a thing as a late night epiphany, right? I mean, those are amazing. And I get insomnia and I'll wake up, and my insomnia is the infamous wake, you know, you go to sleep, but then you wake up at like 3 in the morning and you're just like laying there. And I get a lot of ideas. Like I think last night I was kind of half in and half out. And so I was joking when this space started. It's like I wrote the most brilliant dialogue ever in my head. I wish I could remember it. But you know, there's something to be said for that. So this is, you know, if you're doing that, it's a great time for experimenting. It's a really experimental time. So it's kind of like in general there, I mean, I think so. It's funny because I will write at different times. I have had ideas in the middle of the night that have like, I need to get this down. I was awake enough to realize, so much to you know, anyone's chagrin. But so like here's their idea. I mean, you guys, I don't know if you agree, but there's like saying morning is best for sort of precision. I think that's probably a good time to edit. Um, Afternoons for flow and evenings for, you know, the weirdness, for the epiphanies, for the surreal scenes. See, I don't know. You can test what your rhythm's like, but I think it's interesting to just consider the fact that you do have a rhythm, because I don't think people think about that very much. You know, um, that's really important to consider. That I mean, when you're for some reason for you know you must do these creative endeavors. There's a rhythm to it, and I think we should try and figure out sort of how to tune into that as best you can for yourself. And and so I mean, consider these sort of time. If you break the day apart, you can sort of start watching what you're doing and when you're doing it, if nothing else. And I know a lot of us, it's like, you know, you have a schedule that you have to adhere to. So this stuff has to fit in other places. So that's another thing to consider. But there's something to be said for, you know, what you're doing and when you're doing it. See what your schedule's like. And, you know, I find it interesting. Anybody else have an opinion on this? Any speakers? What do you think, Michael? Or one woman, were you going to say something?
Well, I was going to say, you know, I hadn't really consciously been thinking about the rhythm, but what you described is almost exactly what I experience. That I find that really enlightening. Thank you. Yes, in the evening, and like About the only thing that I'll have going on, whether I'm painting or writing, is I will have like X going on or a space going on where I know the people, and I think possibly because I know pretty much what they're going to be saying, so I can also be working while that noise that's going on. But at the same time, at night, yes, that's when I get my, like you call them, epiphanies. I'll have this, oh yes, this is how that poem is supposed to be going, or this or if I'm working on a short story, oh, I need to you know bring this in, I need to do that, or I need to start this, so it's always in the later in the evening or at night. um you're right about mornings for editing, but unfortunately I do have business obligations during the morning, so that gets all my editing skill. Editing usually comes in a little later in the day. um, but and between the flow and the editing, I mix those two up. But at late at night, yeah, that's totally, I think, the most creative point where the ideas come out, where the really great juicy dialogue comes out or something like that, or just the environment. You see the environment that the story or the poem is going to be taking in, and it's exciting. That to me is the most exciting part.
Very good. There's
Can I just say one thing I just thought of when one woman was speaking? I would just say, the other way to use this is to kind of know that if you have to schedule your day around work and obligations and such, know that the time that you do have to write, use it effectively for what's best at that time is something to consider as well. I'll just throw that out.
Yeah, I think that in general, that's what that's getting after. In total, I liked the point when we were kind of planning this out that you were raising about circadian rhythms, and I think that there's an even broader statement to be made about them in regards to, say, not necessarily an individual on a daily basis, but an individual on a seasonal basis, and like how we produce over the course of a year or not, in parts of the year. So there's the idea that, I want to go outside in the summer and, when it's nice out, and take advantage of that. And that means that perhaps my productivity is going to drop off a little bit. That's not necessarily bad. It's just what happens. I'm doing other stuff, that's to say that the winter time is, in some people's case, is they don't love it and they feel reduced by it. For me, I look at it as like, oh, this is a great time for me to bang out a bunch of stuff and prepare so that I have it for the duration once it starts to get nice outside, and I'm spending some of my time in other ways, not locked to a computer quite as much. 36 hours a day is a lot. So you might want to consider how to take advantage of those factors as well. And I would say at large, what's the saying? Like, we overestimate how much we can accomplish in a day and underestimate how much we can accomplish in a year. And maybe viewing those scales set against each other is a good way to not only accomplish our goals, but to make sure that we have a plan of action that is paced, and we're able to make the chip away at our work and get it across the finish line. Puppy, you got your hand raised. You came up on stage. What are you thinking?
Oh, I'm just loving this conversation so much. I kept losing my connection, so I definitely got to re-listen. I was thinking I sent Heidi a funny meme early saying, "Oh my gosh, mom and dad are fighting," and she laughed. But I loved that exchange. So several about four things: understanding our human biology and our neurobiology, circadian rhythm. I mean, we are actually these. Some people would crudely say meat suit, but this, we are. And so I'm learning about that. And rather than for me skipping over it, like, is this an irritant or a distraction or is this a need? And that includes physically too. You know that I had this nasty fall, a really self-inflicted wound, but it scared me straight and had sustained a head injury and a bunch of stuff. And I have all these people living in my house too. Jaji, I can relate. Two of them are going to be moving out, but I just think I'm so programmed as kind of a mom to just take care of. It's an inside job. I will reach for taking care of your need and ignore my own. So I have been really fierce, and I have to say, this space and Michael in particular, your always insistence on goals, like what you just said, is so good. And I will say, because what I've learned, I was an adult diagnosed with attention things and nerve things. So I have reasons why, for me, especially if I'm stressed, somebody can chew and it'll sound like they're chewing inside my head. Does anybody have that? It's called dysautonomia. So anyway, what I'm working on is getting myself straight. And then I'm finding if that means there's too much clutter, there's noise, there's stuff around that's like has almost an energetic noise slash it will attract me if I'm wanting to procrastinate. So what I've been doing, as I reported last week, is rather ruthlessly increasing my schedule for the downsizing of this and the decluttering of this home where I've raised a family. And I'm just like this beast. But what's powering me is, and Ricky, I wanted to shout out to Ricky. He's not here listening to his space. I love it that, my muse, my work is waiting for me. So I'm also combining sort of a forward direction. This is where I want to go. And so I've got, Michael, I've got my music space almost cleared out. My writing space is coming. I've had it happen too that I set up a writing space and then I don't want to be there. So I'm like, okay, what's that about? Well, I am setting up my outside too. Remember, the author Roald Dahl, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, yeah. He had a writing shed that's, I think, a famous tourist attraction now, but I think of there's songwriters I knew who would do this, literally go sometimes to another person's house, a shed, a location. Is that like the baseball player who has to wear the lucky dirty sock to win the game? I don't know. But it's sort of like whatever it is, sort of learn it and go with it. And then the other thing, yeah, and there is a lot of research about circadian rhythms and the biology of that and how modern life with all of its artificial light and other, things is a distraction, but we can learn to hack is a weird word, but kind of understand it. And then, so for me, the purpose is fueling me. And I'm also been reading a lot about exercise and literally what it does. There's this book, Spark, on almost a synapse by synapse. It's like we're meant to move, and that people have mobility issues, have et cetera. But we really are, Heidi, and what you said, like one of the things he said is, for example, if you're trying to learn something or think about something complex while you're running, that's you're not going to learn very much because most of the blood is being directed to your body to do the exercise. But it's different if you take a walk. And so what you said, Heidi, from what I don't remember all the details, but bottom line, I'm thinking of combining that with what the Pomodoro method is, if you've heard of that, which is to do, my understanding is to structure it so you're doing certain intense things in literally 20-minute breaks. And I know once that doesn't work, if you're on fire and it's pouring out of you. But for me, it's like when you get interrupted. So combining those two, I'm thinking of timing it. And I'm almost to the point where I'm literally going to just schedule that time. I'm thinking for me, I wake up sooner than the other inhabitants of my house. So I'm maybe thinking early morning, but I don't know, because late at night, I loved what you said. Maybe late at night's my time to more capture those inspirational ideas that I'll tend to get. So anyway, that's just a bunch of things. And literally, as I recover from this concussion, I'm going a different pace. Part of what the physical therapist talked to me about, because I've also just got other physical issues, is to not underestimate the importance of getting myself in a comfortable position to write. And, whether you believe God or evolution, it doesn't really matter, but we are these divine creatures and we have these things called spines and they have openings in them. If you're slumped over forward, you're literally compressing the opening, your spinal cord and the openings where your nerve roots come out of. So it's like there's a reason that people that meditate, you see it with prayer, often they are in an upright position. So it's literally, I'm thinking about, some people call it your spiritual antenna that, so there's something about that. But I also think when you're in pain or discomfort or something's nagging at you and you're trying to, hop over it to write, all I'm suggesting, whatever it is, for me, my physical therapist set me up with, I showed her, well, here's how I'm in my chair. And literally by adding all these pillows to truly support, so my head, that your heads are like this bowling ball. It's not dragging my spine forward. It's comfortably balanced. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I could sit here for longer. Whereas I was, and God, my kids, Heidi, you know what it's like, raised with iPads, curled over like pretzels on their beds, trying to read and study. I mean, how do they even, with 4 devices going? So in short, I'm becoming a monk or a nun or something. So if any of that helped, it's sure helping me. Don't skip over what the difficulty is. And so I can't wait next time, because, and then I think what I'll combine this with is a schedule. And literally for me, I think I need to set a timer and just decide.
Well, the Pomodoro method you're talking about, Puppy, I mean, that's really good for like writing sprints, right? Like a 20-minute timer where that's all you do. Because, I mean, you can commit to 20 minutes. You can commit, I will not be distracted for 20 minutes. That's one of the things that are great about writing sprints. If you're having trouble focusing, where you're just like, everything's a distraction because you're searching for every possible distraction. You say, okay, I can do 20 minutes. I can do that, So that's a really good point. And I would, what were you saying? I would just add too, it's like, sometimes, I know what I was going to say. So at night, I will say this, and I mean, this would probably be different for different people, but for me, I'll get those inspirational sentences or dialogue exchanges at night. And I'm not writing them down like I'm structuring them. I basically will, this is why I love Scrivener. I'll just open a folder next to the chapter I'm working on, open another page, put it right next to it, and just write that down. Just get that out, and then revisit it in the morning when I can sort of see if I got something or if I was just see what's there that's usable, shall we say. But those inspirational things, I'll get them at night. So I usually keep my computer next to the bed, which is, I'm sure there's some reasons why I shouldn't be doing that, but I do it anyway. But so if something really strikes me, I'll get up and write it down, get it down. Sometimes I've kept a pad of paper there too. Right now it's been my computer, my laptop. But so, I mean, knowing these things, and I would add too, it's like diet can affect it too. I mentioned that before. It's like, for me, it's like if I'm eating too much food, it shuts me down. So, I mean, these are things to consider. Sometimes, I don't know. So, Michael, what you got? You want to comment on this at all? Anybody have any ideas?
I have other things I'd I'd talk about. Yeah. I would say beyond the internal sort of factors that we have, there are the external factors where we talked a little bit about setting the mood before. I would say there's additional aspects in regards to our senses, right? Maybe it's scent, maybe some of it's sound. It's nice when an area smells pleasantly. And we talked about disruption of a space via sound, but we didn't necessarily talk about creating encouragement via sound. And that can look like all sorts of different things. Some people like nature sounds. Some people, if they want to go to sleep, they need white noise, a fan running or something. Maybe that is the sort of positive stimulus that's required. I like music a lot, right? And some people, they only want instrumental music. They don't want material with words. And that's not necessarily where I'm at. I'm making these playlists, right? Some playlists are kind of like warm up in the morning, right? They're just kind of like, casual, just chill, kind of building a little bit. Others are like, let's get after it. It doesn't matter if there are words or it's instrumental. It's just that like these songs, they got to be all bangers, no ballads. We're getting after it. We're in it. That is a factor for me. Making our mood shift via these sort of environmental components to where we're basically manufacturing a sort of stimulus response scenario with, whatever it might be, lighting, scents, foods, music, other sounds, whatever, but it's about kind of like experimenting and finding a way to generate the result. For me, that's what I'm after, I would say.
It's funny you say that. So I would just throw this out. So like when I'm writing, I like instrumental music that's chill. And it's like, I don't want it to be too modern. I want it to be kind of simple. But I don't know if anyone else does this, but I do have sort of playlists of music for when I'm thinking about what I'm going to be writing that inspire me to sort of figure out the scenes in my head. So I have two different types of playlists, shall we say. One for sort of brainstorming and one for the actual work of sitting down and writing. So I don't know, does anybody else do that? Or
I have a friend who creates playlists to accompany his chapters, which is sort of what you're talking about.
Yeah, but it's like I can't write the chapter while I'm listening to that music. But that music in my head goes with the chapter. Absolutely. So like for the first book, I have an entire playlist that fits in my mind with the story as a whole. So, I mean, that I sort of use and I go back and forth. So it's like it's a brainstorming thing. It's not something that I sit down and write with, but it's like I will, the scenes will come up. I will envision the scenes as I'm listening. And then when I go write them, I'll do a sort of short outline or a loose outline on what I'm seeing. And then that happens. It's like when I listen to the song, the scene comes up in my head.
I am with all of that. And as you know, doing the national parks material basically converting that into videos and then writing music to accompany the videos. So it's a little bit of an inversion of what you're talking about. Trying to build the mood through the music. So I think that, and you know, I consider writing music to be writing as well. I think it still counts, even if it's not necessarily word oriented. There are no lyrics, so to speak. The spoken word elements on top of it become lyrics in a sense, though no meter or rhyme scheme or anything like that, no melody. So yeah, I think that, like, you know, work between all of these different environmental factors. That's an interesting thing, is sort of a meta environmental landscape of the words on the written page and the imagery and the video on the screen becoming the environment to produce music, right? That's, I think, maybe a little bit of what I'm trying to do.
No, it's funny. I will do that too, because yeah, I'll get like themes for parts of the story, because, you know, I put sort of poetry, a little bit of song into my stories.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like a circle, right? It's like sort of this inspires that. There's no chicken. The chicken and the egg dance, so to speak, which comes first. But no, I get that. And they sort of drive each other, just the other elements of your creativity coming in to sort of build something as a whole. There's a lot of dimensions to it, you know. To the story, not just words. And here's an idea. Does anyone have any pre-writing routines? Is there, because I think this is a challenge a lot of times for people, is getting into the mood to write, shall we say. Jaji and I had the same problem we talked about, where we sit there forever and we don't do anything. And it takes us forever to get in there. So, you know, a pre-writing routine. Now that's something I should consider. Does anyone do that? Anybody? I see all you people lurking down there. I see you, Robin.
I don't.
I don't know if you have pre-write. You don't see Robin?
No, of course I see Robin. I said I don't have a pre-writing routine, because basically whenever an idea strikes, I'm trying to get it down. And if I have time to write, then I do that. Like, for example, that article up above in the nest that I released yesterday, that kind of, I manufactured a little bit over the course of a couple of weeks. And it's basically like, oh, I have a couple of free minutes. Let me review what I've got here and clean some stuff up, put some anecdotes in, swap out some notes or whatever. And that eventually, I was shocked when I found the word count. It ended up being, gosh, almost 1,500 words. And I could not believe that I manufactured that many for that article. Because it was just basically like, oh, like, this needs some detail. This needs some detail. I was not trying to be 100% comprehensive. It's just funny how things come out that way. And literally, it was just kind of like, here's 50 words, here's 100 words here and there, and then all of a sudden, you know, you end up with an article that's too long, you know.
1,500 words is about a feature story, I recall. 1,250, I don't know. Yeah, it's funny. Well, that's another discussion. How much will people actually read online? I think I'm going to launch into why I don't think long form content works too well on X. But
well, yeah, I mean,
I will back away from that discussion. Let's stay where we are.
It's not the place for it.
There he is. Hey, Mr. Plane Runner.
I was really caught by what Heidi said about playlists specifically for brainstorming. I don't even know that I create them for brainstorming. It's more like I will be listening to a song and suddenly realize, oh, this captures some aspect of this character or this moment or whatever, and it goes into a playlist. And then if I'm ever I did this on my book, which is soon to release. I I gathered up a bunch of songs that sort of hit me in the moment as I was, moving into a scene or writing a scene or something like that. And then when I came back to edit, um, I was trying to remember what was I feeling when I wrote this the first time. And it was great because I had that playlist handy and I could go back to those songs and I could remember, oh yeah, that's right, this was the vibe that really caught me in that moment or whatever. And so that was really cool. I enjoyed that. I cannot listen to music when I'm actually writing, though. That's impossible. I've tried it and it just doesn't work for me. um even soundtracks, because I end up just thinking about the movie that the soundtrack is from. So
I
but
get I literally have this piano music that is just, I found this little soundtrack record or something, whatever you want to call it, where it's literally just piano music and it's always it's always the same.
right.
So I don't know how long. So the thing is, it's I hear it, but I don't hear it. Does that make sense?
Oh,
So,
totally. And
but yeah, a soundtrack. Soundtrack is visual to me. For a lack of a better way of saying it, a soundtrack to me is visual, and that would definitely be more in the brainstorming mode for me, 100%. So
but yeah, no, I don't have any great hacks when it comes to environment or getting yourself ready. I think ultimately for me, I do, this is actually much to the dismay of my family, I do all right when there's people buzzing around me and stuff. Once I get writing or get editing, I'm gone. I'm not really paying attention to anybody around me anymore. And it can be a bit of a hey, we're trying to talk to you here. Are you currently in the room, kind of thing. But it takes me a little while. I think what I've discovered is, for me personally, there will always be something easier to do in the moment. I can always flip over to X. I can always find some other chore I need to be taking care of, some other book I could be reading. So it really is just a matter of saying, no, I am going to spend, and I like the whole 20-minute thing. I'm going to commit to at least 20 minutes, because once I've committed to the 20 minutes, going another 40 or more is not that hard. But it's that first little just make yourself get moving. And I think in that way it's real similar to exercise or any other kind of thing that once you get going you're going to be okay. But it's that first step, because I'm a distraction machine. I mean, I could, if you saw my feed over the last weekend, I've got a book I need to be editing, but for some reason I decided to do a deep dive on the Karate Kid. Why is that? Because it spoke to me in that moment and I had to go do it. And now I'm paying for it. But I I think making yourself, just saying I know the first 10 sentences I write, I'm not going to actually want to be sitting here in this space doing it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And pretty soon you get moving. That's my only real. And I'm all over the place. I write in my car. I've got a couple spots in the house. It's really just a matter of find a spot on a couch somewhere or in the back bedroom. I'm not good about an office so much. I'm very much a laptop, sit down and kind of force myself to get going. And then once I'm on my way, I'm good.
yeah, I would concur with that. I'm pretty much the same way. But funny, you get into this it's like a flow state, right? Where you're focused, you're talking about that and everyone's trying to talk to you and you're just I get like a startle response to that. It's kind of just for everyone's amusement. I started and I'll do it, and it's not just with writing, but I'll do it if I'm in my head doing something creative. And I don't know if you're moving into your right brain or whatever the heck it is. But the thing is, I'll tell you this story just for all of your amusement. So I started playing the piano again. I literally have not played the piano in like 20 years, like ever since I more or less had my kid, not in any real way. So I've been playing it, and so I'm practicing, and it's it's taken me a while to get anywhere near anything back. But what's funny is I noticed I realized that I get into this flow state when I'm doing things like that or writing, and I get startled really easily. The phone literally rang. I had my cell phone sitting next to me, which you couldn't do 20 years ago when you play the piano. Nobody, I don't think I had a cell phone, but maybe I did anyway, but it wasn't like now, as all of us know. But what was funny about it is it was my son calling me, ironically enough. The phone rang, and I literally sprang out of like I was in a deep sleep so bad that I flipped the piano stool over onto the ground behind me and screamed at the top of my lungs. And my husband came running. He's like, "What's the matter?" I'm like, "The phone rang." So, I mean, there's this truth about you get into this flow state. I think it happens with writing too, because if someone sneaks up on me or even just talks at me, I will startle. I've always, ever since I can remember, had a really exaggerated startle response. I don't know why, but it's just, when I was a kid, people used to love to do that just to get me to jump up in the air. But it's just funny because I realized from that, I didn't realize it so much with writing, but because I guess I don't know, but when you're doing something like that, you realize you just get once you get into that zone, it's like you really are in this other place. And I think that's part of the environment is you really kind of are moving into a different dimension. Let's say I'm going to throw that out there. And it's shocking when someone pulls you back. It's just plain shocking. Jaji, what's up, my dear?
I just wanted to make a quick observation that was sparked by the previous speaker. It suddenly occurred to me that laptops have made it so that we go back to the way we used to be. What I mean by that is when I was young, we wrote by hand, so we had a desk, but you could sit down with your notepad on a couch or anywhere you wanted to go. And then we went through a long period where, and I'm still in that period, I still write with a PC at a desktop. You had to be at a desk because your computer that you were writing on was still. But now with the laptops, of course, I noticed with my kids and the previous speaker, people just go everywhere. They don't even really need a desk in their house. They just sit on a couch with a laptop. And I just thought it was kind of neat the way we came full circle with that. It gives us a lot more freedom in choosing where we want to write.
That's a really good point.
If I can add to that, we've also gotten back to the writing by candlelight. Only it's now the screen's light that's doing it for you.
Very true.
Well, it's funny you say that. When you said that, it clicked in my head. I cannot write sitting at a desk. I just can't. It makes me nuts. I mean, this is true for me, even writing like essays. Like when I was in school, I went back to school about 10 years ago for some stuff. But the thing is, I couldn't write the damn essays at a computer. And I was first time I had a laptop, and I could sit and write them when I wasn't at the desk. There's something about the desk that just shuts me down. It just, I don't know. It feels so official. And it's like, it doesn't feel like a creative place. It feels like an official place. And I don't want to do it there, but I don't know if anyone else. So that's, something I like that you pointed that out. And I wonder how many people in the past were not writing at desks. I guess, I don't know. It depends, right? I know, like, you ever seen that picture of Jane Austen's desk? It's like barely a desk. It's like just a little tiny, it looks like a TV tray, basically is the best way I could describe it. That she could just kind of move anywhere. Puppy, I got your attention, did I?
Yeah. Well, and part of my journey, I'm 70 years old, and I've learned recently I have this condition with my connective tissue called hypermobility, EDS, and I've always was very athletic. I was a dancer. And anyway, I'm learning as I get PT and heal from my recent self-inflicted injury. It's a gift in a way. It's not what happens to you in life, but what you do with it. And so what I'm saying is, and also the neurobiology, we're each unique. And what works for one may not work for the other. I love the idea of portability and everything. But yeah, for me, I wouldn't have thought of that either. But for me, often I associate a desk with the 42 years of practicing law. And that's not what I'm doing now. So there is that almost unconscious association. Or Heidi, if you were trained on piano when you were young with a bullwhip, you might not want to sit there now. So it could be many things. So all I'm saying, yeah, we each get to explore. And for some people, who knows? But and candlelight is beautiful, and there are people that are really into circadian rhythms though, and not having electronic things, but it turns out we are signaled by light in our eyeballs. That's how our biology knows it's time to wake up and go to sleep. And we've all heard about the blue screen. I mean, that stuff literally has an effect. But the thought when Plane Runner, when you said writing by candlelight, my shoulders literally dropped. I kind of went, ah, I want to do that. So who knows, however it works for you, but I'm learning my natural, I don't know, I like all the hours. So I'm thinking of going to a siesta schedule and as I get older too, where I can rest in the middle of the day and kind of have those ruminating thoughts. And then I get a second wind into the night. So I was just going to say, yeah, I'm not trying to be prescriptive, but sometimes I like to bring up, I'd never heard of this connective tissue, but it turns out I'm too loose in places and too tight in places. And so I'm doing my exercises and whatever. But anyway, that's just what I'm into. And that's helping me because I'm like, oh, is this what it feels like not to be in pain? So for me, being in pain was something I either just repressed and shoved down because I worked anyway, or you can pay too much attention. So that's literally part of what I'm navigating. My other thought, Heidi, and I'd love to talk about Pride and Prejudice, but I just can't fit it in. But Virginia Woolf, Vita Sackville West, all of that Bloomsbury group, for one thing, they were wealthy people. Not that they didn't deal with circumstance, but they weren't doing their own laundry. There were, anyway, but Virginia Woolf famously had a standing desk, and I knew a couple lawyers that had one. And now we have sit-stand workstations. They work for some people, they don't for others. Also, Heidi, remember, she and her sister lived across London, and they wrote each other letters with pen and paper daily. So she was, and her sister was, they were intellectual. She was a painter, but they were creating constantly, and they were surrounded by other creative people, huge synthesis. But I was thinking of her, and what is her, what's the book that Heidi, that she wrote, that Virginia Woolf, was it A Room of One's Own?
Yeah, she wrote that. A Room of One's Own, Mrs. Dalloway, To the Lighthouse, right?
And The Room of One's Own had to do with her being a female of her era, right? How she could find and claim, because she was an amazing writer, and she was supported in a way by that culture. And when you're writing all the time, and that's what I've started to realize, I'm writing all the time, some in hand, some typing. That's me writing, and it's more disciplining my time. Is this what I want to be writing about? I'm always jotting down thoughts, writing little limericks, and I plan to use Michael, I forgot the name of it. I downloaded it, but I haven't used it yet. The app you've recommended for organizing all that. But anyway, I was just thinking, for me, there is a physicality to it. And I actually love writing outdoors. And it's probably more the sort of coffee shop writing someone was mentioning, where you're being observational and you're getting ideas and you're seeing things and writing them down. If I'm sitting in my garden and just listening to the birds, or I don't know. And so I have gone through setting up, when I was still working, even outdoor space with a fan. And I felt like I was, I don't know, so there's so much variety for what could work for people. And I'm just really appreciative of the conversation. That's why I wanted to pop up was no prescriptives, but for me, dealing with, and for some people, there are noise canceling headphones. I also like this sort of benign soundtrack depending on mood and what I'm writing. And lately there's this La Lom, all in caps, LA space LOM. Music has it's infused me when I want energy. It's kind of energetic, but mellow, sort of Latin and other rhythms. So anyway, I'm babbling now, but I'm going to drop to listener, but I appreciate the conversation, the variety of our experiences,
No, well, I mean, you bring up some good points with Virginia Woolf, right? I think A Room of One's Own, where she wrote about the Manx cats, one has a tail and one doesn't, which she was euphemistically using as a difference between men and women because she was mad because they wouldn't let her go into the Bodleian at Oxford. It's
yeah, I need to reread that, right?
wow, I haven't read it in a long time, but I always remember the Manx cat thing because it's kind of funny. But what was I gonna say? Wow, I that's literally I got overwhelmed by Virginia Woolf, and now I can't remember what I was gonna say. Michael, are you there? It's Obsidian, I think, is the software you're talking about, Puppy.
Thank you. It's not in my brain right now.
I don't know why.
I'm packing to go spend the day with my mom because her technology, she's 92 and a half, folks, and none of her technology is working. So I'm going to go over there and help her figure it out.
We usually stop around 11. Everybody here knows that, but so about another 10, 15 minutes. But I'm going to do the same thing this afternoon with my parents. So wish me luck. Anyway. But what was I going to say? Oh, I know what it was in terms of circadian rhythm and seasons. So it's funny because Michael was saying, in summer he's not as productive. I'm kind of the opposite. And I think it has to do with just the light. So it's sort of like in the winter, I jokingly say I'm half bear because really it's dark and I want to sleep when it's dark and I want to just like passively deal with the sort of velvety darkness of winter. And and it's cold and I'm just like, I don't want to do this. So it's a trudge for me until I get into spring.
California winter, please.
I know, that's how bad it is for me. Can you imagine what I'd do if I was in a real winter? I'd be lost.
You'd be dead. Don't ever go to Minnesota.
Oh gosh, no, that'd do me in. I know. So that's the funny thing. But the thing is, I get more productive in summer, and it's like, yeah, you want to go out in the day. I get that. You want to be outside, you want to do stuff, but I'm awake more because even at night, it's not as dark as it is in summer. So I will be doing stuff at night. I have more energy to do that because it's not the same sort of darkness that you have in winter. It's even summer. I mean, dark, night in summer is much more alive than it is in winter. And you just want to go out and I can keep going. So it's like, I'll go be writing or I'll, probably be working on audiobooks at night. It's like, it's a good time for that for me. And it just have to figure out what you're capable of. Or what works for you, because we're all a little bit different, right? But for me, it's like I'm more productive when it's a little warmer. I don't mind being up at night when it's warmer because I'm not freezing, because being cold makes me want to go to sleep. So, it's that bear quality of mine. I'm part bear.
And eat the soporific whatever carbs that make you sleep.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Speaking for myself, sorry.
All, big beef stew with lots of potatoes and go to sleep. The end. See you in the, now it's like the sun's coming out here and, the blossoms are hitting the trees and this is my favorite time of year because everything's still green. It's my fellow, I won't dox anybody, but I know there's another fellow Californian in here and knows that the only time it's green is we get it when it's raining, and it's going to stop raining a few months. Actually, May. I don't know. And it's pretty. It's gorgeous. I think California is, it's at its prettiest when it's green. The hills aren't all golden and dead. That has its own sort of beauty, but it's, I don't know. This is because and I'm not freezing to death, and it's not pitch black. I mean, it is pitch black in winter, and that I don't know. It's a different kind of night. So these are things to consider. And I really loved what you said, Michael, about how we overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in a year. I think, this goes right along with my concept of life, that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I think, I don't know if that helps you guys. It helps me tremendously, because I need to sort of stop thinking that I have to do it all as fast as I think I have to do it. But I do have to do it. We do need our deadlines. Anyway, so what's up, anybody? I think we're rounding the corners here. You got anything you want to finish up with, Michael?
Yeah, I feel like we've hit pretty effectively all of the notes, and I would assume for the most part that people have expressed all of their personal perspective. If they haven't, there's still time to do that. For the folks that are hanging out listening, that have been hanging out listening even maybe the whole time and haven't come up, you still have a little bit of time if you so choose. But to recap, we've talked about workspace, distractions, encouragement, to set the mood, right? Cycles of the day, cycles of the year. I think all these things are important to consider, but make sure it's always in service of getting after the work and turning it out. That to me is the most important part. We can always come back and clean stuff up, revise, and make alterations, but put it out there. It's okay. Sometimes you find little bits of things that you have to clean up or change, or you choose to add stuff on as you make new discoveries. That's okay. Gosh, how many times has George Lucas edited Star Wars, in the grand scheme of things? So, Berto, what have you been working on? What are you about to finish and get done and turn out? And maybe tell us a little bit about writing environment and setting the mood.
Good afternoon, Michael, Heidi.
Hey.
Thanks for hosting. I really appreciate it. I want to say that I'm a writer, but I don't have an actual hard copy of publications. Everything's internet based, and I really enjoy listening to this, to people that actually have published works, and finding time to dedicate to. I guess the biggest problem I've been having is actually finding a publisher, a real publisher, and seems like these days it's the indie way. I see that a lot of writers are going the Amazon route, and again, just trying to get used to hearing other people's opinions on standard publishing and this new form of publishing through a digital provider.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think that what has happened in traditional publishing is that they've kind of had to scale back, truthfully, because there's so much demanding people's attention and money that they have to compete. And so they have to make narrower choices. That doesn't mean that there are less readers. There are more readers. It's just that the profitability, perhaps, in terms of like marketing and management of that product to get it onto shelves, is tougher. There has been a lot of consolidation over the last 30 years in all kinds of different industries. And I think that the self-publishing route, while at one point, perhaps was a shadowy term that lurked in the alleys, now it's really the underground. It's in musical terms, it's the A&R department. And if you make a big enough wave, then a traditional publisher may be attracted to your work and then re-release that. We do see that occurring. So, for me, I'm not willing to wait and hope. I already did that with music, and as far as writing goes, like I just want to put the stuff out. I'm going to release it. People can engage with it, and that is really kind of the ideal for me. So if it gets repackaged and re-released by a traditional publisher in the future, that's fine. I'm happy to do that if the opportunity is right. But going back to the analogy of being a musician, going into debt for a record deal, or basically getting an advance on a manuscript, looks and is shaped the same way. So for very little, I can basically do all these experiments myself and build audience and see what lands and connects and where perhaps the best trajectory for my work in the future is. So that's kind of my perspective on it. We are going to wrap up in just a couple minutes, but Berto, you got your hand raised. So obviously I was just talking and you had a question, so feel free to respond.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. I know I've listened the whole time. Just one more. I've done audio chapters of a book I wrote earlier in my life, and I explored the YouTube audio book type of chapter reading, and it hasn't panned out with money, but I had a certain amount of people that would listen to the stories, and I've been contemplating doing the spaces here. Any opinion on that?
Don't. You're not going to make any money doing spaces. I really think that what you want to do is put your stuff into the market and build up an audience and get indexed. And, doing these spaces is really about like the community. There's, people hang out here regularly. We do this space every week. So it's a little bit of commiserating and networking, but, it's also about kind of like covering the bases in regards to themes and topics. And, I'm less interested in the performative spaces where people are reading their work. I'm not saying that it's bad. It's fine. I even a few weeks ago had a number of people reading poetry in the Wednesday space that I do. And, I'm not going to shut it down. I just am not looking to hang out in that kind of space or to host that kind of space regularly. It does not suit me, because like my times when I'm reading or my times when I'm listening to a story are particular, and that's not to, speak against anybody else's habits. They're perfectly fine to do it any way that they like. That's just my nature. But hey, we are up against the hour. So that means, we're going to wrap it up for today. An important note I do want people to know is that the March Grand Sumo Tournament has started this past Sunday. You can catch all the daily action on NHK World. That is a English language Japanese programming channel broadcast around the world via the internet and their Roku channel. So we do appreciate you hanging out today. I think we had a great conversation. Take a look at all of the stuff up in the nest and, keep working. Next month, we'll have another workshop. Later this month, we're going to be talking genres and also settings and world building. So, we've been plotting ahead. I think actually, if I'm looking at the schedule here, we got the next 2 weeks planned at least. So that, making a little progress. Next 3 weeks, actually. I just didn't write down the other one.
What are they? Do you remember?
I just told you. Told you what it was. Genres, settings, and world building. And then the next one. Right. Yeah, you literally just said that. Heidi.
I'm sorry. I was focused on sumo wrestling. You know how important.
Yeah, I do. And then after that, we'll be getting back into the hero's journey piece of things that we've been doing. So, hey, enjoy the rest of your day, and we will talk again before too long.